Well, welcome back to the show. So here's a question. What does it say when you don't see yourself represented in the books that you read? Well, last year, a group of high schoolers in St. Louis created an AAPI book list and pitched it to 10 schools. They were all ignored until they joined forces with our friend, Michelle Lee, and the Very Asian Foundation.
But in addition to being a news anchor, a mom, you're also running a nonprofit, NBD, no big deal. Remind us, though, how the Very Asian Foundation started and what you're up to right now.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks for asking. The Very Asian Foundation started because of a racist voicemail. This woman called and complained about me being on air and talking about New Year's traditions. And I was talking about eating a Korean soup. And she said that I was being very Asian and I needed to keep my Korean to myself. It's a great voicemail to listen to. But ultimately, it was a gift because I did a commentary and then Ellen DeGeneres gave me $15,000. And I said, well, I could buy some new windows or I could donate the money, but we had already raised a bunch of money for the Asian American Journalists Association. So then we said, well, let's use the money to start a foundation and let's call it the Very Asian Foundation.
And I'm also excited to talk about this thing that you are really focused on right now, which is getting kids to have access to Asian literature in libraries. Talk to me about this.
Okay, well, we're calling it the May Book Project because we know that every May we're going to come out with a new list, but this is a project that's going to last all year round. And really, at the end of the day, it was solving a problem. So some students in St. Louis, and they go to schools with large AAPI populations, by the way, some bigger than like when I lived in Shoreline. It had more than Shoreline, So last year they created an AAPI book list and they sent it to 10 schools and they said, hey, can you buy some books? And they went ignored. And so, and so they were really upset about it, actually. And they, I don't know if they just didn't get the attention because they were students, but I said, hey, you're the core audience for schools, So I said, let's try to get your book list together into schools. And what we ended up doing was going to experts. So we went to like national scholars. These are PhDs with like youth literature degrees, and specialize in youth literature. And then they're all a part of other groups like the Asian Authors Alliance, We Need Diverse Books, Apollo, which is like a librarians association. So, I mean, there are all these groups convening together to create this list. And now like libraries and schools are picking it up, which is pretty amazing. In fact, I've had some emails with some folks in Seattle. So I'm hoping that it gets into Seattle schools and libraries. And we have people raising money for us in Seattle too. So I think that we need a Seattle library to come out and come forward.
Let's talk really quickly about just share why representation is so important in these books.
So in literature and in education, a lot of people talk about windows and mirrors. So you want to be able to see yourself reflected in literature. And then you also want to see others' lives as well. So that's the windows component. And it's crucial for young readers to be able to do this. So even though this is a youth literature project that is centered around Asian American youth literature, it's really for all readers. And that's what I love about it. And I just got to say one thing, like some of the young people have talked about their mental health over the last 2 years in the pandemic. And just this, some of them are invisible in schools and felt hyper visible in their communities. So like they would go to their family business, after school and get yelled at for the mask mandates, or people would say, racist things to them. And there were a couple of incidents where people were really, felt threatened and scared. So it's a really big issue. People really need to see themselves because it gives them confidence and makes them feel like they are valued.
Absolutely. And finding that way to integrate that into all of our libraries. I know we're about out of time, but I know some libraries, they just don't have the funding. Some schools don't have the funding. How can you help? Okay,
so that's another thing. So just the book list, we want people to celebrate. Also, we're going to give some guidance. We have some guidance out there with an Apollo rubric. It's a very, academic look at like building an inclusive library. And then also, if you don't have funds, you can reach out to the Very Asian Foundation and we will get those books to you. We have a really awesome corporate sponsor in Asutra, which is this really great like self-care company owned by someone you might know named Venus Williams and Stephanie Morimoto, and they sell their products in Target, and so they're a really big corporate sponsor. They're going to sponsor like 4,600 books across schools in the country. So
that is
it's amazing.
so great. And we need to all be asking our own PTAs and school districts to start coming up with a list. Michelle.
Yeah, lots of ways to help, by the way, without spending a dime. So if you want to, we'll take it.
And we have a link to the May Book Project and those lists that Michelle was talking about on the New Day website.